Professional wrestling started to become nationally recognized back in the early 50s with the birth of the television. Kids used to just gather around by their fishbowl black and white television, and they would watch Vern Gagne and Lou Thesz wrestle for the NWA Championship. In my opinion, wrestling didn't really blow up until the early 80s with the WWF bringing WrestleMania to the forefront. The WWF didn't stop there, of course. They reached out to toy companies and, of course, video game companies. Nintendo pretty much revitalized the video game industry with their Nintendo Entertainment System. And of course, the WWF wanted in. So they made a couple games for the Nintendo, and they were... They weren't all that. The problem, I think, was just the controls. Every one of those games didn't really handle well. They started to look good as they progressed. It looked great sometimes. But their actual gameplay was just pure crap. And we know that they can do better because we've seen pro wrestling on the NES. For some reason, the WWF games just didn't play good at all. And unfortunately, through the 16-bit era, it didn't really help either. You would think that with great graphics and great sound would have just great playability for these games. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Meanwhile, the WWF was shining with their arcade games. They had WWF Superstars and the classic WWF WrestleFest. Around the early and mid-90s, Hulk Hogan had left the WWF for WCW.
You know, brother, you think you got what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan? Why don't you climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world? Hollywood style.
And so the WWF had to push their younger generation of superstars. So they had Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart pushing to the forefront, and they became awesome. In fact, Shawn Michaels to this day is my all-time favorite wrestler. With that said, I would always use him in WrestleMania, the arcade game presented by Midway that was pushed out to the arcades. This game was a complete quarter muncher, and I enjoyed pumping all my laundry money into it. I remember going to a Blockbuster back in the day because that's where I used to go rent all the video games.
Lift with the legs, Morgan.
Right next to each other was a copy of WWF WrestleMania the arcade game for the Sega Genesis and one for the Super Nintendo. Me being the one with the Super Nintendo, I was thinking to myself, it's got to be better on that, right? I mean, it's got better sound, it's got better graphics, the color palette looks better. I mean, it's everything on the Super Nintendo always looked better in my opinion. So I went ahead and rented WrestleMania the arcade for Super Nintendo. I took it home and I was disappointed. A lot of the sound was taken out. I couldn't believe how many characters were left out. As angry as I was, I went ahead and just took the game out, went back to Blockbuster, and got the Genesis one. Thank God my sister had a Sega Genesis. It sounded better, it looked better, it played better. This was one of those times where Genesis did what Nintendo didn't. And I can't believe I just said that. The coolest thing about the WWF or WWE now is that if you were to go and play the games from the NES era all the way to WWE 2K16, you can see the improvement on each game. It's like they try to outdo themselves with each title. And to me, that's awesome because there's a lot of games out there that just doesn't do it that way. WWF has always been consistent with how their product was always released. And that quality is what made that brand thrive. And so now we got WWE 2K16 and 2K17, and we've got characters that look great, and you can see the sweat on their bodies. I don't know why I'd want to see that, but you can see that. The moves are much more complicated. I think the only thing I have a problem with is the control scheme. the default control scheme is just, I don't like using the thumbsticks for, you know, moving the characters and to do all the moves. I'd rather use the buttons, you know, and leave the thumbsticks for like the taunts and stuff like that. That's something I was accustomed to from playing a lot of wrestling games from back then. With that said, I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about some games that I actually do own that are WWF related or wrestling related in general. WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game. Again, this is a true gem. This is probably the best wrestling game on the Sega Genesis. I'm not saying a lot because there were a couple of good wrestling games. I can't name them all right now, but I'm pretty sure there were some good ones. Super WrestleMania is like Batman Forever. I have no idea why I have this game. All I can tell you is I don't like it. The controls are stiffer than morning wood, man. I have to agree with a lot of people when they say that this game right here, WWF No Mercy, is the pinnacle of wrestling video games. This had all the coolest moves that you could come out with. This had a great create a character mode. I mean, you can play as Ryu and Ken, you can create Sagat. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff with this game. And the moves just this game just handled great. This is one of the best N64 games, period. My friend Philip gave me this. I think he just wants to torture me, but no, I still love you, bro. He gave me ECW, Hardcore Revolution. This uses the same engine that Acclaim tried to use for WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude. Just, well, you know, I wanted to say stay away from those games, but you know what? Those promos are pretty hilarious.
Mr. Punk, that little ass body of yours get property here with the ass whipping I'm gonna give you in the ring.
Last but not least is a true hidden gem for the Super Nintendo, Saturday Night Slam Masters. This game reminds me of Final Fight. So imagine Final Fight with all the crazy moves that you can do with Street Fighter and then put it into a wrestling ring. Hell, you even got Hagar from Final Fight in this game. This is a really cool, this is a really awesome wrestling game. And if you guys get a chance, you guys see this out in the wild, grab it. I don't think it costs that much. I don't know, I paid like $5 for it. This game is worth every dollar that you spend on it. Trust me. You can't go wrong with Saturday Night Slam Masters on the Super Nintendo. Damn, I sound like a fucking commercial. Okay, so that's it. Sign off time. I want to thank everyone for subscribing to my channel. I also want to thank everyone for recommending my channel to other people. Be on the lookout for Combo Breaker. It's on inkshares.com right now. I'm going to go ahead and go forward and just work on chapter 2 and just keep working on each chapter till it is completed. So it'll get published a lot faster. So check it out on inkshares.com. I'll have a description below. Till next time, peace out, guys.
I knew all along you had those tendencies, cause you've been running from macho like I got a disease. Dude, Blaze, your pay-per-view event was a joke. You're avoiding Randy Savage cause you know you can smoke. Come on, that phony fight the rock.
You're still here, jabroni? That's fine. Know your role and sub my channel. If you smell what the Max is cooking.